Today, we are joined by Joana Cerejo, a design lead and AI product designer working at the intersection of user experience, behavioral science, and intelligent systems. She spent nearly a decade designing AI-powered products across industries like fintech, e-learning, and manufacturing, always with a strong focus on making these systems more human-centered, trustworthy, and ethically grounded. Joana is also the author of the Anticipatory Design Playbook, where she explores how we can design AI systems that don't just predict behavior, but truly support people in meaningful ways. In this conversation, we are diving into one of the most complex questions in AI product design today: what it really means to anticipate users. So, welcome to Human X Intelligent.
Thank you, Madalena, for your warm welcome.
Thank you. So, when we talk about anticipating users in AI products today, what are we actually anticipating? Needs, behaviors, or outcomes?
Well, in fact, all of the three, but they operate in different layers. And most of the products only address the surface level per se. For example, anticipating the need is the most common approach. It means predicting what information or action the user might want to do next. This is where most of recommendation engines live. And then you have the behavior anticipation layer. This goes a little bit deeper. It means try to understand the patterns in how people interact with the system, including implicit clues like browsing history, location, timing, all kinds of historical data, not just explicit comments between the user and the system. And then you have the outcomes, like you mentioned. This is the most ambitious layer under anticipation and also the least common because it's really hard to achieve this properly. And it means helping the users to try to help the user reach their desired future state, like learning a new skill or improve or improve something in their life or gaining a new habit, something like that. And this is where the anticipatory design shifts from reactive to proactive, because the system will try to help the user move towards something, to move the user towards a specific outcome. This is the real shift from designing for tasks to designing outcomes, because as designers, we shift from asking how can the user sign up for a gym, for example, to how can we help the users build more healthy habits or be more fitness, something like that. So we switch from the task to the outcome. Today, most products, they claim to be anticipated, but mostly what they are good at optimizing for engagement metrics. But through anticipation, it means understanding the user intent, what the user is trying to accomplish, and then designing this goal behavior, what kind of actions the system needs to do to help the user achieve that future goal.
Yeah, for sure. And basically, when teams say we are anticipating users, it sounds kind of or almost magical, right? Like the system is or knows what you want before you do, which it's kind of weird, but that raises a deeper tension. Are we predicting what users will do, what they need, or what we want them to become? And like this ambiguity is where everything starts to unravel, right? I would say in this sense, and if anticipation isn't just prediction, then it's something much more powerful, in my opinion, and more dangerous, or it can be more dangerous, right? Because it shapes the experience and not just responds to the user, right? Which leads, I think, to a critical threshold, which is at what point does anticipation stop being support and start becoming control?
That's a very good question. In my perspective, when the system acts without the user understanding or explicit control of the user, that's when we start creating systems that can cross the fragile line between useful and becoming controlled. And I think the designer responsibility is to be very aware of this and design these control levels in the system design itself. Be very conscious where we are removing the user control in the service we are trying to automate. But even so, design guardrails so the user can overcome the service automation anytime they feel they need to be in control.
Yeah.
If we remove the user from this control level, that's when most of the systems start to feel creepy and that we don't control the solution. And this level of control will be critical depending on the industry where you are designing from, because it will depend on the level of the risk trade-off. If it's entertainment, things can be okay. You remove control, but the impact that can have on the human being is not that dramatic. But when you start designing for service in financial and health, the trade-off is really, really important. So we need to learn how to design this human in the loop mechanism in our systems. We can automate to a really high level with anticipation, but we need to design these mechanisms into the system so the user feels in control. Otherwise, the system will feel creepy, and in the end, you can have the best algorithm in the world, the best user interface, but if your users don't trust your system, they will not use it, and in the end of the day, you don't have a business. So the human in the loop design is extremely important for this highly automated solution.
It's like at first anticipation is very helpful or feels very helpful, like reducing friction, saving time, and so on. But at the end or gradually, it can actually become like narrow choices or like a guided behavior. Like it's not we are not doing the behavior, we are being set up for something in that sense, and even like make the decisions for the user. So I think the real design challenge would be, or it becomes like, how do you design anticipation in a way that still preserves this user agency?
For example, there are many studies and reports now saying that most of the AI solutions, they fail when they reach the market. Mostly they fail because they are not looking to the actual user problems. They are trying to put AI as a sophisticated layer over already fundamental broken systems. And this will touch in the agency because it cannot be think as an afterthought or look to agency like one more feature that we need to put on top of the system. If we do so, the probability of the system fail will be higher. So we have to design for agency since the beginning of the process. And the way I do that is looking to behavior science frameworks. They exist for many decades. I think it's the missing link between what already exists to what we need to bring to our design process for the AI era. And these frameworks are already proven to be very, very useful. The three that I like the most is the Prochaska Transtheoretical Model. They say that people progress through states of changes, meaning every user that signs in a service, they're ready for the change, or their behavior pattern will be in these different levels. So we have to prepare the system to automate, anticipate the experience to meet where these users are. And most of today's AI don't do that. They just think in the moment where all the users are in action mode, interacting with the system. They don't think about the other stages where the user can come from. Another framework is the Fogg behavior model. He explained that behavior only occurs if you align three things at the same time. They cannot happen separately, which is the motivation, ability, and prompt at the right time. And if these thing elements don't converge at the same time, behavior will not happen. And many times, what I see in many AI systems is that they lack the understanding of the motivation of the user to use the system. They focus too much on the ability, make the technology possible for the user to interact with the system. And most of the time, they forget how timely interventions are so important for the success of the solution, because it can annoy the user or make them feel generic, so the user don't feel that hyper personalization they are hoping to have with the AI. So the wrong prompt at the wrong time easily break the expectations and the user mental model have over an AI system.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one that touched to this last part of the behavior model is the nudge theory that highlights that the right intervention at the right moment can break or make your service successful. So this practically means that we need to start designing for these behaviors, how the user expects to interact with a supposed intelligent system. And in my book, I put this thought into a framework in a way that intent is the key element, what triggers everything in our design process. So the intent is the core. Without understanding the user intent and the behavior, workflows and algorithms cannot meet the user needs at the end of the day. Or
how would you say professionals can add these frameworks or these small nudges in their products in a roadmap? How would they justify, for example, adding to a roadmap, and how would they frame it for a road?
Like we start this conversation, intent and agencies, they need to be designing from the beginning, cannot be an afterthought. And like agency, intent isn't a feature to add to a broken system. It has to live across the entire user journey. If you treat anticipation like a feature, you are over relying on the data to make predictions. And human beings are everything but not predictable. And this is the layer that I see where most of the AI solutions today broke. And the way to incorporate these thoughts is to look to your design process and try to break it into three big moments. First, because with an anticipation lens, what changings the user is trying to achieve beyond their context. Then you move to a lens when you start imagine how many possible features the user can have that will impact their journey towards that future oriented goal. And in the end, you look to the shape lens, starting to use those behavior science frameworks and other methodologies from Foresight and apply them on how to build a system that can adapt and preserve the user agency over time. And if you break your process between anticipation and imagination, possible futures, and then starting to converge and shaping your solutions towards this alignment, you will have a more resilient user experience and service in the end. A good example for us is, for example, the Figma Make. AI can make things visible very, very easy. They will do exactly what you ask. You will prompt Figma Make, he will generate what you want. But Figma Make cannot design user intent. That understanding and that research need to come from you. Otherwise, you can have a very polished design and prototype, but empty in context for your user.
It's like we are building something with them, so it's like a colleague. But even though in that, I really enjoyed when you said a future. This is not a future; it's something to add. It would be something adding to a broken system. I find that very intriguing. You would say that it's something that everyone or every UX designer, product designer should have in the back of their head and should always implement to whatever feature, whatever job they're taking in that moment, right?
Yes, because today most of the companies, they over rely on the data. Everything is about data. You use historical data and present data to predict the behavior of your user. But the problem is we are living in such a fast pace that the social aspect, economy, technology itself will impact your user in ways that your system needs to be prepared to scale and adapt to evolving needs of the user. Most of the systems don't do that today. A very good example that I like to share often is the Nest Thermostat. When he was launched, it was the best example of anticipatory design. Everyone mentioned this as the gold standard for an anticipatory design experience. This was so good that even Google acquired them for a bunch of money. But the problem with these systems, although they over rely on the data. They can learn your habits for a year, but they have a really difficult time in scaling for different scenarios. So they work on probability, not what's preferable for the user. And that's why we need to start using more methods and tools from Foresight and start to think of possible future scenarios. And a very easy example is if you have a newborn, he joins the house. The house in that day, the system will break because he is not ready to scale for different scenarios. He was trained for a year of usage data that no longer meets the context of the user. I think if the team starts think more about possible future scenarios and incorporate them in the algorithm, saying if this happens, if in creating several possible scenarios, we can create more resilient user experience that can scale with the user context and intent.
What would you say to those people that say that humans are very predictable and they don't change and we are not that complex? What would you say to them? Why do you think that it's important to go with evolvement and scalability and growth with humans? Because we are always changing, there's not enough patterns yeah.
If you look to the latest reports, most of the solutions that fail is because of that. And for example, in the Gen AI space, more than 90% of solutions they fail because of that. The technology is really cool, but people are not understanding the use cases where the humans would want to use that. And I think that's the main factor why most of the solutions fail. We are failing to understand the behavior, the relationship of the human with something that is so high, so intelligent and has so much high automation capabilities. And the studies are supporting that vision that there is a disconnection. Data is really good for complex but stable systems where things can be highly automated because they don't change. So AI has been very, very successful in B2C context. But moving to B2B, things starts to getting more not complex but complicated because we are missing the human nuance, and this leads to another interesting point. You can design systems where people overtrust or distrust completely your solution. So it's not just designing for transparency and control, but also for it's also about designing for transparency and control, because the risks of a person overtrust your systems could have a really big impact on their well-being. And the same of the opposite, if they don't trust and neglect some signals of the system, also could lead to catastrophic outcomes. So I cannot say how much important is to start incorporating more behavior science in our design process when we are designing for intelligent systems. It will be really the key to make them more ethical and more proactive. And if we want the systems to be long-term successful, the key is to bring the Foresight methodology to try to make them more resilient over time.
And considering what you just said, where would you draw the line between the prediction and manipulation in artificial intelligence systems?
Like I mentioned before, the line is in the designing the agency, the control, and all come together to the intent alignment with the user intent alignment. Because prediction serves the standard user goals, and manipulations, they will serve the system hidden objectives. And if you don't design a transparent system, the user will not see how much they can be manipulated. Many times they overshare data, and that data becomes the coin for the business for other purpose that the user has no idea. I can add another thought on the manipulation level, which is the filter bubble problem. Is a concept that the algorithms are conditioning the vision and the experience of the users. They will be fed what they want to see or seen in the past. So the over reliance on the past data, they are looking for what's probable because based on what the user saw in the past and not what is preferable, what the user might want to see in the future. And this is a really big issue, especially in the social media space and entertainment. People are not making no longer big literature and drama because the content has to be clickbait. So this is putting in question even the quality of humanity, sense of art and philosophy, because everything has to be optimized for an algorithm. Recently, I read even an article about that in Spotify, that the albums are not done anymore for the test of time because songs has to be clickbait and hook you in the Spotify loop. So this is a very big problem and manipulation to a system level that I think most of people are not aware of.
It's like it's like the prediction informs, but the manipulation like pushes people or pushes the outcome in a preferred direction, and that is not very, very good sometimes. Yeah.
And it's doing that collectively, not just to an individual level, which is extremely dark.
Yeah. But that begs the question, like, when that line is crossed, like, where does the accountability go, right? Who is responsible when this anticipatory system influences user behavior, groups of user behavior negatively, right?
Yes, we didn't mention accountability yet. It's so critical. It's one of the 7 dimensions I identify for measuring AI user experience, along with the trust, transparency, agency, fairness, privacy, and perceived
the
quality.
list goes on.
But the short answer is I think organizations that deploy systems, they are responsible for the accountability of the system. But this question goes very, very deep. But at least what we as designers can do is to try to create safety mechanisms or feedback mechanisms in our systems that at least improve this accountability layer. Users need to know that they are people, not just a number to the systems. And this means creating, like I mentioned, the feedback loops, try to bring ethic patterns and responsibility structures to our user experience, and the way to do that is for the users to gain some machine learning, deep learning, and AI literacy. Otherwise, they will not know how to influence the development toward these ethical and accountability and explainability aspects of
It's like because these systems aren't neutral, they like embed decisions made by designers, companies, and incentives, right? So ultimately, I guess all of this kind of leads to one defining question is like, if teams want to design anticipatory systems, they're actually human centered. What is the one principle they should not compromise on?
For me, it's transparency, 100%, because transparency will hold everything. Transparency is the base to build trust. You can't have a trustworthy solution without transparency. And transparency will be the open for creating user agency and interpret user intent. For me, is for sure the foundation of everything where we that on. And I think we need more, maybe, I don't know, heuristics or structured ways to audit transparency in our design process.
I guess after everything like prediction, control, adaptation, transparency, visibility, responsibility, the core principle isn't about like the intelligence or the futures or whatever it is. It's actually about respecting the user's ability to choose, understand, and change. At least this is what I gathered from everything that you shared, right?
And because if you get transparency right, everything else will come. The trust, the user agency, the fairness, the accountability, because you have a solid foundation to do the rest well.
Thank you so much. I have one last question before you go. And I would say for everyone that is listening, how would you say that they could start learning more about anticipatory systems? Of course, getting your book, number one, but besides that.
Yes, be curious and look for what behavior science already discovered decades ago. We are not inventing the wheel. We are just figuring out that our old design process has flaws and gaps for these new areas. So we need to be curious and look to other areas of knowledge. Behavior science and foresight, also known as future thinking, are the best ways to do that in their methodology experiment. I'm suggesting to use this tool or use that, but what today is working, maybe tomorrow is not. So everything is new, everything is evolving. So what we need to do is experiment and fail faster. So we have feedback of what is working and what is not. So that's my best advice today, is to
Share
don't
it.
have a box mindset. If we always done the design process in this way, that's why we need to do. No, be open mind, try to grab knowledge from other fields of knowledge and bring them to your design process.
It's basically, if anticipation is about shaping what comes next, then designers aren't just like building products, they're shaping behavior, choices,
Yes.
and futures. And I love that you said go grab from other places, because we forget that there's so much knowledge in other people's brains that develop from construction, whatever it is. So it's very good. Thank you for that. Thank you, Joana. Thank you so much for challenging us to think more critically and specifically about responsibility in what we are doing today, because we are doing for users, but users are people. So
yes, and we are building systems that are influence so much people's life that we need to be more mindful and design for accountability and fairness. So there's a lot to do in these times.
it's exciting. I
Yes,
think
I
it's
think so.
exciting. So thank you so much. Thank you to you, and thank you to everyone that is listening. And please contact Joana on LinkedIn. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for the invite. It was a pleasure.